Super Bowl 56 has come and gone. The Los Angeles Rams are your Super Bowl champions for the 2021-2022 NFL season. What a week. What a buildup from all last week at Radio Row, where we were on deck in person, Pro Football Network Daily. Some great interviews that you're going to catch as well. Some that we recorded that you didn't get a chance to see. We are going to have our sit-down interview exclusively with Patrick Peterson a little bit later on today's show. But what an absolute banger of a game that we saw on Super Bowl Sunday in Los Angeles. It was hot inside the stadium. I'm Cody Rourke, your host of Pro Football Network Daily. To break down the action, to talk about the big game, I'm joined today by our guest analyst, Tommy Gary. He's our Pro Football Network fantasy analyst. We're going to break the game down right here. Tommy, my friend, hey, it's great to see you. I missed your face the entire week. It was busy. I was tired. We were grinding, and it was an absolute fun experience to be in Los Angeles. But, man, the game itself last night, it lived up to the hype. It lived up to the bill, and that's all we could ask for. What a great game. The Rams, they're Super Bowl champions.
You're not kidding. And I know, like, Detroit, they're like half happy, half sad because you watched Matthew Stafford play, for 12 years and didn't get that. All of a sudden, he gets his first chance on a real team. All of a sudden, he gets 4 playoff wins, gets a ring out of it. So you can't be nothing but happy right now for the Los Angeles Rams. Sean McVay also kind of silencing some of those critics after what happened when they last went to the Super Bowl. But I mean, it was a game that lived up to the billing, and that's kind of all you can expect right now. Like, it kind of matched the halftime show. But no, like, before we even get into the game, the first thing I want to give kudos to you, to Brian, to Ryan, and the rest of the PFN team for what you guys did on Radio Row, pulling that off. I know some of the stuff that went on the behind the scenes, things like that, but, like, first of all, like I said, kudos to you guys. You guys pulled off an incredible show the entire week. So really just a hat tip to you guys and what you guys are able to do.
Oh, man, thank you for the love. A lot of it, too, we couldn't have done without, all of you, too, the written team back home who are watching the interviews, trying to get tentpole articles up on them. It was a complete team effort here at Pro Football Network. And ladies,
y'all kept us busy. I'll say that
on next year in Tempe, Arizona. We're going to be there for the Super Bowl again as well. We're going to be in Vegas coming up here in a couple months for the NFL draft. Now, real quick here, as we get into the chat section, twitch.tv/Pro Football Network, share us your thoughts on Super Bowl 56 from the standpoint, what you thought of the game, the halftime show, storylines of the game. Drop them into the chat, and we'll obviously answer them as we go throughout today's episode of the show, starting things off here with fake Ben Rodgers. He says, "Suck it, Eli Apple." And I had put a tweet out there yesterday, and I felt like it was perfect. Eli burnt crisp Apple in that game there. Obviously, eyes discipline from a cornerback standpoint. He gave up the touchdown, on the wheel route there, specifically to Odell Beckham Jr. Really great play design there by the Los Angeles Rams. But
we roasted Kevin King in the NFC Championship game last year for what happened with Mike Evans. Look, Eli Apple, you just took the crown, big man. Like, you got to carry this one for a while, because every single wide receiver in the NFL, rookie to a veteran that's been in the Pro Bowl, all pros, like, they all went after him. So, like, a lot of people were happy what happened with Eli Apple. So, hey, it is
all
what
that
it is.
Talking that he did on Twitter, on social media, bashing fan bases, bashing cities, he set himself up for failure there. And look, it is what it is. McCole Hardman sending it out saying, "Hey, buddy, hope you continue to work on trying to be a good cornerback, but you don't have one of these, a big old Super Bowl ring that he had there." It's just those
if
things.
You're going to talk, be able to walk. You got to back it up.
Spot on. And the biggest stage of them all, he just simply couldn't get it done. Got burned a couple times for a touchdown. But let's talk about the LA Rams here too, because you mentioned too, a lot of Detroit Lions fans sitting at home are like, "Oh my goodness, Matthew Stafford won the ring." I feel like if you're a Detroit Lions fan, you kind of felt like you won the Super Bowl as well, because Matthew Stafford has been such an intricate part of that organization for his entire career, minus this year spending it in Los Angeles. It was a great moment to see. Dan Orlovsky, as we know, was sitting in Matthew Stafford's suite there in his box. Big moment for him, but, happy for Matthew Stafford. So we're going to go through the storylines here from the Rams perspective, from the Bengals perspective, to recap this game. Not to mention the halftime show was absolute fire. We'll talk about that as well. But, Tommy, I want to start things off on today's show here, PFN Daily, on twitch.tv/Pro Football Network. I want to start off with the standpoint that the Rams, when you look back in this season, I think one thing that we can say is they risked it all to go all in to win this 1 year. Nothing is guaranteed after this year for this Rams team, and I think they had the most pressure on them considering the moves that they made to win the Super Bowl. Well, now Sean McVay has that pressure off of his shoulders. The Rams, they don't have that weight on their back anymore, and now they are Super Bowl champions here. They went back, the Matthew Stafford trade, big sign of that. The Von Miller trade, big sign of that. The OBJ trade, a huge sign of that. And obviously, we'll talk about OBJ here in a little bit. But man, the risk paid off. No draft picks. The salary cap. We talk about all those things. The Rams went all in, and it paid off.
Yeah, I think that's the big part is like when you put this big of a bullseye on your back as the Rams did, saying we do not care about draft picks. We just want the best player available, and we feel we are like virtually one piece away, and that would be in the quarterback, the most important position in all of team sports in North America. Like the quarterback is what drives the team. You get Matthew Stafford, you get rid of Jared Goff's awful contract, but it costs quite a bit. Remember, like a couple months ago, like there were a lot of big names out there saying that the Detroit Lions won this trade. The Rams walked away with the Super Bowl. I think that's a definitive way to say who just won this trade. You make the midseason move to acquire Odell Beckham Jr. Whether they would have done that or not, given the Robert Woods injury, who knows? But look, he played a pivotal role down the stretch in the playoffs, and even in that brief moment in the Super Bowl. Look, he found the end zone, helped get that team on the board, scoring the first points of the game. So for me, like the Los Angeles Rams, you put this pressure on yourself and you delivered. Because if you look at the rest of the teams in Los Angeles, you had like the Los Angeles Dodgers. They won the World Series, but they did in the COVID year. Like the Los Angeles Rams just pulled off the first Super Bowl in LA. Same thing with the Lakers, but they played a full season. So kudos to that team. You put it on yourself. Yeah. You delivered. You got some questions to answer coming up in the offseason. As you said, it's very hard for a team to come back and go back in the Super Bowl. That's why we always look back at what the Patriots did with such fond aspirations and memories, because to do that consistently is a totally different ball game. They've got the pieces, no question about it. We'll see if some of those still are retained going into next year. But what the Rams did, they put up, they delivered, and they shut up the other 31 teams in the NFL and a lot of other pundits.
A huge moment for the Rams, too. PFN Superfan 1 in the chat says, last 2 years, the teams that have sold out to win it, now they have won it. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers going all in on Tom Brady, and now the LA Rams going all in on Stafford, OBJ, Von Miller. Great.
There's also something to be said right now when we're looking at the Aaron Rodgers situation coming up. Look at Russell Wilson and some of these other quarterbacks. Look, you've seen Matthew Stafford now leave. Grass is greener, wins a trophy. Tom Brady leaves, wins a trophy. Now you've got Aaron Rodgers coming up potentially. You saw what happened with Peyton Manning. Leaves, goes to Denver, wins a trophy. So look, there's a little bit of a precedent to be said right now. Look, you might be able to leave and go pull something off. If you're not happy with your current situation, Rams and Buccaneers just pulled off back-to-back years.
Yes, they did. And Fake Ben Rodgers makes a great point here in the chat. Didn't Rams get OBJ the day before Robert Woods' injury? Yes. And in our sit-down interview that we had with Robert Woods, I believe it was the week of the injury, because I sat down with Robert Woods during Super Bowl Radio Row week, and one thing he said is that, when the OBJ trade did happen, or not the trade, the signing did happen after he got released by the Browns, one of the things he did is OBJ FaceTimed that wide receiver room and said, hey, I'm coming into this situation, a brand new team. I don't want to come in and step on toes. That I mean, that right there, I think we've seen all these narratives about OBJ and how he's a locker room cancer. He didn't get that vibe, and Robert Woods spoke highly of him. And look, when Bobby Trees says something like that, you listen to Bobby Trees because he is so well loved in that locker room. But he said that OBJ asked for permission to come into that room and to be able to grow with those guys, not step on toes. You don't get that very often because a lot of people, they try to win. And obviously for OBJ, there's something we'll talk about here with him, but kind of going down the list here, I want to talk about the Rams defense in that fourth quarter. They were very clutch because look, the Bengals had a lead with just 5 minutes remaining. And I guess we could talk about officiating too at some point. There were some questionable calls late in the game. It does happen. Obviously, I think we can factor in one was a makeup for the Jalen Ramsey getting face masked, offensive PI'd by T. Higgins on the very first play.
There's no such thing as OPI.
Of the second half.
Doesn't exist.
Man. But DB, sure enough, you could breathe on a wide receiver. They're going to throw a flag there. So let us know your thoughts in the chat section down below here on Twitch, what you thought of the NFL officiating there. But, Von Miller came up big in the fourth quarter. Aaron Donald came up big. There was a moment in this game that I felt like, okay, hey, and I put the question out there on Twitter. I put a statement out there, and for some reason, people have a hard time comprehending or reading to the last sentence. I said, we have seen the Bengals in this position where they're trailing, and everything is not going right for them at one point of this football game. We haven't seen the Rams in that position hardly at all. I didn't say ever. I said hardly at all. So, Trey Wingo quote tweeted that, and he said, well, they were like that in the NFC Championship. I understand that, but I'm talking about, identity, right? When you look at the Bengals, they were in that position so many times this season, and they fought back and they willed their way to do it. They have that DNA inside of them to be able to come back. The Rams, yes, they did it in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. My question was, is it enough for them to do it here in this moment? I mean, I felt like the camera crew at NBC, Tommy, they kept scanning and finding Sean McVay. I felt like at the worst times, because there were moments where McVay looked panicked. He looked panicked on his face with how things were going. I was like, oh man, the narrative, if these guys lose the game, is going to be huge.
Narrative being the key word. Yep.
One of the things too, also as well, sorry, I was reading a chat section here from PFN Superfan. He says you can't not call anything all game and then magically call everything with 2 minutes to go and game online. Can we talk about real quick? Can we talk about Logan Wilson? What an app he was playing with, like a man possessed out there, Tommy. I love seeing his flow there. And what happened on that too, on that penalty that they had called on him, not a penalty. He did a great job getting his hand on the hip, bringing his ball side hand forward and deflecting the pass. Those are just one of those things you can't see. And then obviously that changes the entire dynamic because it gives them at 1st and goal.
Yep.
I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all.
Because it was the matchup that the Rams wanted also. Like, if you're looking for any matchup, like, that was the mismatch. I guess my whole thing, like, with the calling is, like, I would rather a game be officially a little bit looser. Like, let the teams play. Like, I don't want the narrative of the game to be the referees. Granted, we saw some missed calls. So, like, they kind of tightened up there in the end. There was definitely an impact there towards the end of the game. It's how much of it did truly impact the final score. I don't think it truly did. I think the Rams were probably going to pull that one off, but you can't sit here and say, like, hey, look, they called it super easy in the beginning, and then they definitely tightened it towards the end. All you can ask for is consistency. Just be consistent one way or another. Look, the NFL, we know the officiating has been a talking point about the entire season. We all know that the NFL doesn't actually have any full-time referees. Like, all these other guys have jobs. I mean, Collinsworth and Michaels talked about during the broadcast.
Exactly. They made it a point to bring up the fact, like, oh, he's a lawyer. He does this. Oh, he's a principal at a high school. It's like, this is the problem. You need full-time officials because then they can dedicate to making the game better.
I agree. These guys, they're in Super Bowl 56, or you say on a normal on a Sunday game. They're literally, the minute they step off there, they got to punch in, for their 9 o'clock job the next Monday morning. Like, we can't be having that. If you're expecting these athletes to put in all the time and dedication to be better at their craft, we should hold the referees and everyone else involved in the NFL to the same accountability level. Like, you should be dedicated 100%. Don't focus on being a lawyer, whatever case you got. Congratulations, good for you. Your job is to be a referee, and I think the NFL should put more onus on that and work on the development programs, get these referees more trained and better equipped, have some transparency in the process. My God, who could think of that? The XFL did. NFL, take a page out of that. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, just give me some consistency. That's it.
One of the things we talked about too this week, I forgot who I was sitting down with. We were talking about replays. We were having a dinner in Los Angeles downtown with some awesome folks of CBS Sports, and we were sitting down having a conversation about officiating. And it's like, how is it that the NFL can implement the replay official where you can automatically go in and replay something? You can have it already after a play happens from somebody upstairs, and then your officiating review can get it wrong and you can challenge it and get it right. Like, it shouldn't be this complicated to officiate an NFL game. I get it is the fastest game on earth when we talk about humans on a playing surface. It is 110% balls to the wall the full entire time there. There's going to be errors by officials, but I think when we talk about it, consistency, standards that have already been set in place, you have to follow that if you're the NFL, because then it leaves you subject to questioning, which everybody right now, including myself, I've been a big proponent of saying the NFL needs to invest in full-time officials. It needs to be a priority, and they can no longer wait to do it. I'm going to get off my soapbox here. We're going to stick back to the Rams game here. But then, obviously for the Rams, Cooper Kupp taking home MVP honors, 2 touchdown catches. And I tell you what, watching him this season, Tommy, has been spectacular.
Yeah.
We can cover it from a fantasy angle, but his number, we talk about triple crown. I mean, receiving yards, receptions, touchdowns, impact. Unbelievable. And that throw on that corner route there on his first touchdown by Matthew Stafford was beautiful. I don't know how it could get any better, but Cooper Kupp taking home the MVP. Did you agree with him winning MVP, or did you feel like maybe it should have went to somebody on the defensive side of it?
Man, I'll be honest. This is a close one, but if you're going to just give me pure impact, it's hard to overlook what Aaron Donald did. I think there's a legitimate case that Aaron Donald could have been given MVP of that game. Like without question, Cooper Kupp made a massive impact. We saw what he
Yeah.
did in the game. We saw what he's done all season and put together one of the greatest seasons by a player in NFL history. Like I said, you talk about the Triple Crown, but Aaron Donald doing what he does as a three tech, always taking on multiple 350-pound dudes built like a brick house. Like, oh, here, let me just use a single arm and push you out of the way like a toddler, and then come in there and just be disruptive in the backfield. I mean, look, the final play of the game. Well, I guess the final play for the Bengals and what kind of sealed it. I mean, that was Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
This defensive line did the narrative of this game as much as it was Jamar Chase against Jalen Ramsey. It was really the Bengals offensive line against the Rams defensive line. And it didn't take very long to see the tweets starting to come out talking about the Cincinnati Bengals and what should happen in the draft or what they should have done in the draft.
Yeah.
But they never would have been there if they didn't have Jamar Chase. Like I said, we can talk about that at a different time. But yeah, for me, I mean, Aaron Donald, what he did, I kind of feel like I would have maybe given it to him.
Can we go back to that moment where Joe Burrow is still in bounds? Aaron Donald, as pursuit heavy as he is, pushes him. He's still in bounds. Completely clean play, completely fair play there too. And he's on the Bengals sideline. He's got guys pushing him, trying to get in his face. You don't do that to Aaron Donald. You know what happened after that? Aaron Donald, the very next play, he absolutely destroyed one of the offensive linemen. Like we talk about a actual bull rush where he got underneath, drove his feet and pushed the offensive lineman back and created that pressure. It was unbelievable. So it's like there's a saying in the world, you never kick a sleeping dog. The Bengals did that right there, and it came back to bite them. And I get too, offensive. I mean, you love to see that your O-linemen for the Bengals are going to do whatever they can to protect Joe Burrow, and they're going to have his back. Absolutely. Spot on. However, you pissed off Aaron Donald. Probably not the best thing that could happen there, and his impact was there. And from the very last play, he impacted it, and he was a big reason why the Rams came away with victory. So I do agree with you. I think the Aaron Donald
maybe it's just me,
Miller too.
But I don't think I'm going to upset a dude that has a strength equal to the prayer of 1,000 Southern grandmothers. That dude is as strong as it gets. So I don't think I want him going against me.
No, I would not want Aaron Donald chasing me as is. I mean, there were times where he just tracks backside. Like they'll run a toss play or a stretch play opposite of him. He'll shoot inside the guard in between the center, and he'll still track it backside. I mean, that is how good of a football player is. And there's been some questions here, Tommy, about Aaron Donald's status, about whether or not he may retire. I was surprised because it's like, he might retire before Von Miller retires. Like that to me. But then again, it's like, what does he have to prove now?
I thought we were going into this on Andrew Whitworth career watch. I didn't realize we were going to this with Aaron Donald career watch.
Yeah, the whole narrative's got flipped. We can see, Andrew Whitworth potentially still play. I think he's going to retire. But like for Aaron Donald, I understand it too. Like he wants to preserve his body. Like for him, he said in an interview, he's starting to feel it now. But for him, he's been the most dominant defensive player in the NFL. He and TJ Watt for quite some time here. I mean, he is an absolute piss missile when we look at how he plays the position. Now he's got a Super Bowl trophy. That right there, I think, when you look back on it, and I had the same moment too, Tommy, like one of my aspirations in high school, guess what? We hardly won games. When I went on to go play at the next level, I wanted to win games. I wanted to win a championship. And after we won our first championship, the year after I graduated high school, I thought to myself, like, hey, I won a championship. I could retire now. I was like, no, I want more. I want this again. So I think as long as maybe Aaron Donald is at a place where maybe his body is okay with him continuing to play, I think it'll be fair to say we'll probably see him back. However, look, if he's completely satisfied saying, hey, you know what? I've done it. He's going to be a Hall of Famer regardless. I mean, his impact is there.
Look at his resume. I mean, Rookie of the Year in 2014, Super Bowl champ now, 8-time Pro Bowl, 7-time first team All-Pro, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 2010s All-Decade team. The guy only missed 2 games in his career, and neither of those games had to deal with injuries. I mean, Aaron Donald is the best player on the planet. Like if aliens invade and we have to send one human to go try to represent our race to save our own existence, I'm sending Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald and Dwayne Johnson, they're going. I'm sending both those guys. Those guys got our back.
In a tag team match, I am taking that all day long to the bank. And there's something to be said about going out on top. We talk about that with Tom Brady, like what's going on with him. He just played arguably his best year of his career. And he's now stepping away from the NFL, although, family is part of involved with that. So you have to wonder, like, look, is it just health? Is it family? Like, what's there left for Aaron Donald? I mean, he could absolutely sit here and say, like, he can go out as the greatest player in the NFL on this day. And that's a hell of a platform to be able to stand on, because the next time we would see him on a stage would be in Canton, Ohio.
Spot on there, too. I mean, just an impact player. Fake Ben Rogers in the chat here. Twitch.tv/Pro Football Network. Burrow needs help. Otherwise, the Bengals are going to kill him. It doesn't matter how many of his teammates have his back on the sidelines. That's true. I mean, Joe Burrow took some shots.
Yeah.
And both Matthew Stafford and Joe Burrow had moments in last night's game, Tommy, where I'm like, oh my God, this could be a devastating injury. I mean, for Matthew Stafford,
His
the
knee.
ankle and the knee, I was like, what is going on? For Joe Burrow, getting twisted up on his knee, I was like, this is brutal.
The difference is, though, we've seen Matthew Stafford injured his entire career and keep playing. He had that very much what Ben Roethlisberger has done throughout his entire career. Whether he was banged up and injured, we never knew about it, but he just kept playing, aside from the back last year. But with Joe Burrow, like, we've now seen 2 years. One of those ended with a gruesome ACL injury where he completely just blew up his entire knee. And then all of a sudden we're worrying about that in this one. So, like, the difference, like, between those, like, we saw Stafford play through these with Joe Burrow. Like, I just don't want him to turn into the next Andrew Luck, because that guy has sauce you can't teach in a cookbook. So I just want him in the NFL around longer, and don't end up getting treated like they did Andrew Luck and ruin his career because they didn't have an offensive line.
That is a fantastic euphemism right there. I like that, Tommy. Tommy may have to steal that from you one day.
It's all yours.
I love that. But even like PFN Superfan one in the chat says, if they don't fix the O-line, Burrow is going to be the next Andrew Luck, which you don't want to see that. Another superstar quarterback that just takes too many hits. His body can't handle. I mean, even though these guys are professional athletes, they have the best access to medical technology in the world, the best training staffs. It does weigh on you. I mean, there's times I even talked with Bill Romanowski last week, and he said all the years of playing is like, the way that they teach the game now is safer. He's like, if they would have had that when I was playing, I probably could have played another 7 to 8 years. And he played 16 years in the league, by the way. Unbelievable. There.
I mean, at this point, you just need to go
my head a lot.
Just give Joe Burrow a lifetime supply of Flintstone gummies and a 6-pack of SpongeBob Band-Aids, and that is your signing bonus every single year. Man. Like, that's what's going to take to keep him playing.
Speaking of injuries, too, there was one key injury in yesterday's game. Odell Beckham Jr. left with a non-contact injury to his knee, and the belief right now that's been widely reported is that he tore his ACL. I want to talk for a moment and say, Tommy, I firmly believe that the Rams would not have gotten to the Super Bowl. They would not have won the game yesterday if it wasn't for Odell Beckham Jr.'s contribution.
Completely agree.
From his leadership standpoint coming in, we talked about the story with Robert Woods. That was one thing that stood out. The first touchdown catch, which I had actually cashed in and won on a bet that OBJ was going to be
for the first score
out of the game.
I'm glad like 900 or something. Like, that was a hell of a payday.
It was good. It was very good. So thank you to our good friends in the betting world for that. But, for him, just his impact. And even in the NFC Championship game, both he and Cooper Kupp, they went off and they needed those contributions from those guys. And Cooper Kupp said a lot, too. I think in his MVP postgame report, sitting on the podium, he says, I don't feel like I deserve this MVP award here. He said, when we look at these other guys that have stepped up, OBJ. So it is a confirmed torn ACL, according to our good friend Ian Rappaport. So the second torn ACL in 16 months for him. Same exact knee, if I'm not mistaken, Tommy. And now he's set to become a free agent. This is the worst time in the world. And I think it also goes to a bigger conversation about artificial turf fields. That is something that, even NFL players, they've created a petition. I don't know if you knew this, to be able to flip the turf, to make it grass, like to bring grass stadiums back to the NFL.
Look at what Arizona and Vegas is doing. They're wheeling it out, wheeling it right back in. Like, if they can pull it off, like most of these other stadiums could do the same thing. It'll be a little more difficult in some colder climates, but like, we have the technology
and the money, for example. Like, golly.
Like, look what the salary cap's doing. It's ballooning up this year to the highest it's ever been. Like, we know the money is sitting around here. They got the new TV deals. You got Amazon coming in here. Like, the money is here. Like, these owners, these billionaires, they can pull this off. You don't need to get any taxpayer dollars involved. Go back to the original grass fields. Like, there's a low maintenance side to it, but there are too many injuries we're seeing over and over. I mean, look at last year with MetLife Stadium. Like, you were so worried if someone went to MetLife Stadium. Like the San Francisco 49ers, when they went to play at MetLife Stadium, back to back, exactly. Like, you are so concerned if anyone goes there. Like, and it's starting to be too much of a pattern. And I'm sure there's people with PhDs and doctorates that have already gone out and done the studies of, the effects of the body and knee injuries on artificial turf versus grass. I'm sure it's out there. They're way smarter than I am. They can pull that off. But I mean, it's just visually and just watching, like, more and more times we're seeing these injuries pop up on these fields, and maybe it's because we're looking for it and we notice more often. But when all these players are speaking up and saying something about it, and they're the ones that are on these fields day in and day out, week in and week out, putting their bodies on the line, I feel like at some point you have to take the you have to take the initiative to listen to the players, which I know the NFL has never done a great job of doing. But when player safety and player health is on the line, which is the main platform of the NFL and what they're pushing as their main narrative, maybe it's time to listen.
If I was on the NFLPA side, if the CBA was coming to an end, we know that they had to rush it last year,
Yeah.
especially with the whole COVID stuff
Yeah.
going on. I would have been on the NFLPA side of things, the players union saying we want grass fields, all across the board because artificial turf. I believe that the report suggested that did come out is that non-contact knee injuries were up by 23% this year. Ankle injuries, non-contact were up, I think, 40%. And I think the majority of players that got injured, it also happened on what side of the ball? Special teams,
Special teams.
kickoff,
Yep.
punt coverage. Because literally, as a gunner, you are running full speed downfield there, and you're planting. That's how I tore my ACL, was on kickoff. And guess what field surface I played on? Artificial turf. So, I completely understand where these players are coming from as someone who's done that. And I hope that the NFL does at some point listen to their players and say, hey, we've got to do something. Unfortunately for Odell Beckham Jr., it puts a lot about his future in question. However, I would not be surprised to see the Rams, because they will have some salary cap stuff coming on. They'll convert some roster bonuses to signing bonuses there for various players. I think he'll be back on good faith. And then when he's ready to return, they're going to welcome him back with open arms onto the football field. It makes too much sense here. So I'm happy they're OBJ a champion, very emotional. And I think all the narratives we saw about OBJ, yes, he had a hand in some of the dysfunction that was going on, but for the narrative that he was the problem, he simply wasn't the problem. He was in part of an environment. And I just said the word that Brett Yaris is going to be summoned by now. Environment that was not conducive for his own success. I mean, when you have other wide receivers that are feeling that, I don't think it's necessarily a Baker Mayfield thing. It just could be an environment. It just may not be the right fit, but in Los Angeles, it certainly was. Now, Tommy, one more Rams topic before we focus on the Cincinnati Bengals here on today's episode, PFN Daily. As we get closer to 250 total followers at 208, once we get to 250, we will do a live jersey giveaway, and one lucky follower will have a chance to win a free jersey of their choice if they help us get to 250. We're hoping to get there by the NFL draft, where we will be once again boots on the ground on location in Las Vegas for the NFL draft festivities.
Can't wait.
Matthew Stafford, finally a Super Bowl champion here, Tommy. And I think there's a lot of debates going on right now. Is he a Hall of Fame quarterback? I want to start off by saying I believe that he is, or that he will be. I still think he has some time to play. And here's why. In his career, he has 42 game-winning drives, which is 7th all-time in the National Football League. He has 5 seasons in top 10 touchdown passes. He has 49,995 total passing yards, 12th all time in the NFL. And he's had 8 seasons out of his career where he was in top 10 in passing. Him being we just summoned Brett Yaris. Brett Averse says hello. We said environment, and sure ugh, first time chat. He pops in. Brett, we appreciate you. But I think this is a valid question. This could be something you're going to hear all week long on national media. But we'll talk about it. Do you believe, in your opinion, that Matthew Stafford will eventually be a Hall of Fame quarterback?
Man, when you put it in context, like that is tough, because the hard part about it is when you think of like, hey, what does it take to cross the threshold to get into Canton? Because it's not just your own accolades and what you've done throughout your career, but you're compared against everyone else who was in there. I mean, you think about if he just retired today, he'd be going into the same class as Tom Brady. And it's not a fair comparison, but Brady's going to be in the Hall of Fame
easily,
probably before Matthew Stafford is in there. Like, assume they don't retire at the exact same time. I think you can make a case for it. I genuinely do, because I think part of it also comes down to the circumstances you were in. And if we look back to the Lions teams he was a part of, it's like he put up these numbers in spite of the team he was surrounded by. Like, granted, you had Calvin Johnson, like you had, Megatron on your team. So it definitely helped your case. But he wasn't put in a situation like he was until right now with the Rams, where he had a team who let's just throw all this money at here. Like, the Lions are ran like a small market baseball team, which is weird because like there's no salary cap in baseball. You can throw as much money or as little money as you want to, but like in the NFL, there's a salary cap that you can use all that as you want to. Like, they ran them as too much like a business and not like an NFL team. And so at a certain point, you've got to put the players around them to take advantage of those talents. We've seen Stafford ever since he was in college at Georgia. Like, he's got one of the best arms in the NFL. And like you can see right there by his career stats. I mean, I think adding that ring, that might have pulled it off. That might be enough, especially when we consider, Super Bowl rings, the be all end all when it comes to quarterback candidacies. And it's why, someone like, Philip Rivers isn't necessarily considered where you do like have Matthew Stafford, because he's got that ring. Same thing with Eli Manning. Maybe Eli's got 2 of them. now Stafford has entered that conversation.